Love, a word that echoes in poetry, pulses in music, and haunts the minds of men. We are told it is pure, that it is mutual, that it is redemptive. But in the shadows of that narrative lies a darker truth, one that men intuit but seldom articulate. Love is not only an emotion, it is a weapon, a psychic force, a mirror with smoke behind it. And few thinkers expose this dynamic with more precision than Jacques Lacan, the French psychoanalyst who dared to dissect desire, not as something sacred but as a symptom, as a lack, as an illusion that binds men not to reality but to fantasy. And at the center of this illusion, the woman and what she represents in the unconscious mind of man. Lacan taught us that we do not desire people, we desire what they represent. A man does not fall in love with a woman per se, but with an image, a projection, a symbol of what he feels is missing within himself. Lacan called this the objet petit a, the object cause of desire. It is not the woman herself that holds power, but the place she occupies in the man's inner world. She becomes the mirror in which he sees his future, his completion, his imagined perfection. And once a woman occupies that role in a man's psyche, she no longer needs to conquer him. He conquers himself. This is where the manipulation begins, not in overt deception, but in the man's own unconscious complicity. She becomes the fantasy he must preserve at all costs. Her approval becomes his compass. Her validation becomes his mirror. He abandons logic for longing. He surrenders identity for the illusion of completion. And the more he gives, the more he confirms the imbalance. Because the man who idealizes a woman surrenders the ability to see her clearly. Lacan argued that love is not fusion, but misrecognition, a dance of projections, and women, whether consciously or not, have long known how to weaponize this. They don't need strength to control a man. They need only his desire. They reflect back to him the fantasy he craves, and in doing so, they become indispensable. He begins to act, not from his core, but from his craving. He becomes reactive, anxious, eager to please. His masculinity dissolves into compliance. And ironically, the more he tries to secure her love, the more she senses his weakness. Because love, when used as leverage, thrives on imbalance. It survives not on shared truth, but on concealed motives. Lacan called the woman the other, not simply another person, but the unknowable space upon which the man projects his internal hunger. And here lies the tragedy. He believes he is in love with her, but in truth, he is in love with the part of himself he thinks she will complete. She becomes a screen for his missing identity. This is why rejection from a woman can destroy a man more deeply than betrayal by a friend. It is not just about loss. It is about fragmentation of the self. He does not lose her. He loses who he thought he was when he was with her. And in today's world, this psychic dynamic has only intensified. Social media elevates women to divine status. Men scroll through curated images, unconsciously reinforcing the fantasy of the unattainable goddess. Meanwhile, hookup culture teaches women to attach value not to loyalty, but to leverage. Emotion is monetized. Affection is withheld like currency. Validation is given only to those who conform. The man who dares to assert his own vision is labeled toxic or insecure. And slowly, love is no longer a meeting of minds. It is a game of control. But what can men do? How should they adapt in a world where desire is weaponized, where love is no longer mutual, but transactional? The first step is awareness. A man must understand that love, as Lacan saw it, is never truly pure. It is always entangled in fantasy, ego, and unconscious need. The more idealized the woman, the more vulnerable the man becomes. He must train himself to see beyond the projection, to look not at her beauty, but at what he thinks her beauty means. Is he chasing love, or chasing his own validation through her acceptance? Is he serving his mission, or abandoning it to orbit her approval? Second, a man must reclaim his symbolic order. Lacan spoke of the symbolic as the structure that defines reality, language, law, identity. Modern men have allowed the symbolic order to be rewritten by emotion, by aesthetics, by the soft tyranny of romance. He must instead build his world upon principle, not pleasure, discipline, not dopamine. He must become the name of the father, Lacan's archetype of masculine structure. Not a tyrant, but a figure who imposes order on chaos, purpose on passion. A man must define himself before he enters love, lest he be redefined by it. Third, he must resist the desire to be desired. This is where most men fall. They do not seek to lead, to build, to conquer. They seek to be seen, to be validated, to be adored. And in doing so, they forfeit the very essence of masculine power. As Lacan stated, desire is always the desire of the other, meaning we want what we believe others want. If a man craves female approval, he becomes moldable, predictable, weak. But if he detaches from that craving, if he becomes indifferent to being desired, then, and only then, does he become truly powerful. Not because he does not feel, but because he is no longer enslaved by feeling. Lastly, men must embrace lack. Lacan believed we are all incomplete. There is no final fulfillment, no perfect partner, no eternal union that will erase the void within. The modern lie is that love will make you whole. The truth is, wholeness is an illusion. The strongest men are not those who chase completeness, but those who function in spite of the void. They do not run from it, they build from it. They understand that desire will always exist, and yet they do not let it master them. So what does all this mean for the man watching this today? Torn between love and logic, seduced by beauty, haunted by rejection. It means you must stop chasing illusions. You must stop believing that love will save you. Love is not salvation. Love is seduction. And seduction is not evil, but it is war. If you enter this war unarmed, with your soul in your hands and your logic abandoned, you will be devoured. You will be reshaped. You will be emptied. But if you walk in with awareness, if you see her not as a goddess, but as a reflection, if you understand that her power over you is proportional to your own inner void, then you can finally love without slavery. You can finally desire without delusion. In the end, the most dangerous woman is not the one who lies to you. It's the one you lie to yourself about, the one you turn into a symbol, the one you make into a savior. Don't seek salvation, seek sovereignty. And remember, a man who is whole within himself can never be weaponized by love. Love, a word so drenched in fantasy, wrapped in perfume, and sung from rooftops that men rarely stop to ask, what lies beneath it? For millennia, love has been sold to men as a virtue, a salvation, a gateway to completeness. But what if that very gateway is a trap? What if love, as it is wielded in the modern world, is not a sanctuary, but a weapon? A weapon aimed at the male psyche. A psychological snare wrapped in intimacy and sweetness, concealing the sharpest of blades. Friedrich Nietzsche, the eternal questioner of morality, would likely answer, of course it is. Nietzsche saw love not as something divine or selfless, but as something inherently selfish, strategic, and dangerous. He once wrote, "There is always some madness in love, but there is also always some reason in madness." He understood that beneath the surface of affection lies the human will, not to bond, but to dominate. To Nietzsche, love is merely one expression of the will to power, our deepest desire not to coexist, but to control, to bend the other into our image. And women, through centuries of biological necessity and social restriction, have become masters at this art. They do not need swords or armies. Their battlefield is emotional. Their strategy is intimacy. And their greatest weapon is love, or rather, what they portray as love. In truth, It is often conditional affection, a form of manipulation so subtle, so rewarding, and so socially sanctioned that most men never question it. They believe they are being loved, when in fact they are being leveraged. Modern society has only amplified this. In a time when men are told to be emotionally available, vulnerable, and open-hearted, they forget the ancient truth Nietzsche hinted at. Every emotion is a transaction. Every attachment is a negotiation. A man who loves blindly walks into war unarmed. Let's be clear. This is not a diatribe against all women. It is a dissection of how power moves through the illusion of love. When a woman says, "If you love me, you'll change," what is that if not manipulation? When she withholds affection to punish, when she dangles intimacy as reward, when she shames a man into submission in the name of emotional maturity, she is not nurturing, she is controlling. She is enacting Nietzsche's will to power in the most refined, socially acceptable form. Domestic dominance disguised as romantic concern. When men enter into emotional territory with women, they must bring their strength, not lay it down. They must carry the whip of awareness, discernment, and control, lest they be conquered by a smiling face and a soft voice. The tragedy is that most men don't learn this until it's too late. They give, they serve, they prove themselves, they bleed for love, and still they are discarded. Not because they failed, but because they succeeded too much. Their submission became unattractive. Their loyalty became predictable. Their masculinity was bartered away in return for conditional approval. And when they finally ask, "Why wasn't I enough?" they never realize. That was the point. You were never supposed to be enough. You were supposed to stay chasing. The illusion of love only works on the man who still hopes. So, how do men adapt? How do we, as Nietzschean thinkers and modern warriors, survive this emotional labyrinth? First, by rejecting the lie that love is always good. Love is not inherently moral. It is not always healing. Like any tool, it depends on who wields it and why. Men must stop romanticizing female affection as truth. She may love you, but love you for what you give, not for who you are. She may want your strength, not to admire it, but to harness it. She may nurture you, not to support your mission, but to soften your edge. Your mission is to notice the difference. Second, men must reinstate boundaries as sacred. The modern man is too pliable, too eager to compromise, too willing to explain himself. Nietzsche would argue that a man without boundaries is not noble. He is pitiful. A strong man does not adapt to love. Love adapts to him. When a man holds to his values, even at the risk of losing the relationship, he asserts power. And if that love cannot survive his strength, it was never love. It was a contract of control. Third, men must master solitude. Nietzsche admired the man who walked alone. In his solitude, he becomes invulnerable to emotional blackmail. He learns to source his validation from within, not from the gaze of a woman. In solitude, he becomes a philosopher, a strategist, a creator. He discovers that the highest form of love is not romantic, it is self-mastery. And once that is achieved, any love that enters his life must align with it or be dismissed. Finally, men must accept the harsh truth. Love is not owed. Loyalty is not automatic. The same love that lifts you today can destroy you tomorrow. And when it does, society will not mourn your fall, they will blame your failure. So you must build not for comfort, but for clarity. You must lead not for applause, but from principle. You must love with eyes wide open, and if necessary, you must walk away without flinching. Nietzsche did not hate women. He saw them. He respected their power, perhaps more than most men do. But he never forgot that behind the blush lies instinct, behind the tears lies strategy, and behind the word love lies a chessboard. And if a man does not know the rules, he becomes the pawn. In a world where emotional manipulation is cloaked in the language of intimacy, the man who survives is not the most romantic, but the most aware. So stop chasing illusions. Stop giving your power to a feeling that shifts with the winds. Love when it aligns with your mission. Walk when it no longer does. And above all, remember who you are without her. Thus remember, we are Indecepta. Becoming Indecepta is the code they never wanted you to learn. A psychological war map for men, forbidden teachings fused with modern strategy for influence, dominance, and self-mastery. If you want peace, prepare for war.